Now, Byzantine costume, you'll find, has its foundation in Roman attire. You're going to get your tunic, you're going to get your palla, you're going to get your stola, but it is worked very, very differently. Remember, the Silk Road was at its absolute height during this era. And so the Byzantine Empire, which was prosperous, for the wealthy, for the imperial family and the high-ups, was marked by silk, by embroidery, by jewels. Very, very sumptuous compared to a Roman attire, which was much more pared down. But you are going to find the elements are in place. Your tunic, your palla, your stola. But let's take a look and see what the Byzantine Empire did with all this stuff. All right, you've got your tunica. Let's start with the boys. You have your tunica beneath. Okay, so both men and women wore tunicas, also known in this era as chitons. Not to be confused with the chiton we saw in ancient Greece. It's just the word being used again, just to make everything even more confusing for you. So both men and women wore tunicas beneath the rest of their clothing. Men's were calf length and women's were full length. But here is a new item, the dalmatica. This is the dalmatica. A dalmatica was an A-line tunic with split sides. For the elite, it was embroidered or trimmed with jewels. Now, a lot of what we find in Byzantine costume is actually still worn today, very much in its original form, by the clergy. Priests, for example, wear dalmaticas, don't they, when they are giving a special service. So thinking about it, this was the first official culture that officially used Christianity as the basis of their faith system, as decreed by the emperor. It's not surprising that their mode of attire would kind of become the standard for religious Christian practice. And it just hasn't changed. So, the dalmatica. Let's move on to the ladies here. We have the palla. Remember, we met the palla before, and the stola. The palla and the stola are still in play. Just like in ancient Rome, but in Byzantium, for the upper classes, both the pallas and stolas were made of sumptuous, colorful textiles, often embroidered and sometimes bejeweled. All right, for the imperial family, for the royal family, they wore this collar called a superhumeral. Only worn by the royals, the superhumeral was a large, heavily jeweled collar worn by both genders. And then the crown, the Byzantine crown, is called a lauros or a pallium. And on a female pallium, there are strings of pearls and jewels hanging from it at the front. All right, so I've just written it up there for you. The imperial family wore heavily jeweled crowns, the empress's crown sporting long strings of pearls that hung in 2 or 3 rows at the front. Byzantine costume was it was a sight to behold. The eye was dazzled by it, and this was the whole point. We really see costume being used as status here. But what I find interesting about Byzantine costume is that the location of Constantinople, right there in Turkey, right at the point where East meets West, really has this complete amalgamation between what we have seen thus far in Western costume, Roman costume, for example, and this incredibly exotic influence from the East.